From the TV30 studio, here's Jim Schneider.
Well, hi, and welcome to inFocus. Tonight we're going to be having our public policy update here for matters going on in the state of Wisconsin, and there is much. Though the legislative cycle is over, friends, there's no shortage of issues to talk about this evening. Matters pertaining to public policy. We've got important elections that are coming up here later this year as well. And there's much happening. For instance, last Friday, we saw the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals put a stop to these mail-order abortion pills. Well, that was overturned today by the United States Supreme Court. We're going to be getting into that this evening. We'll also be talking about the upcoming Wisconsin elections and how things are shaping up there. Some interesting developments that are going on as we approach this, the primary in August and then also November. And you would think that there would be an end to this insanity of boys and girls locker rooms and showers and facilities. But friends, the issues are still going on. We still have problems in the state of Wisconsin, and we'll be talking about that. And meanwhile, we have Governor Evers declaring again, now we have Lesbian Visibility Week here in the state of Wisconsin. We've got that and a whole lot more tonight. It's our privilege to have back Daniel Degner, who is president of Wisconsin Family Council. Daniel, good evening. Good to have you here.
Yeah, great to be here. Glad to be with you as well as with all the viewers.
You know, Daniel, let me first of all congratulate you at Wisconsin Family Council this past Friday night, holding a gala and celebrating 40 years as an organization and marking 27 years of Julian Appling's involvement with Wisconsin Family Council as well. But it was a wonderful evening and great speaker, and just congratulations to Wisconsin Family Council.
Yeah, thank you. And for the listeners that are frequent listeners, they would know Marv Bunyan and Julian Appling have been such a key cornerstone to our movement. We're grateful for organizations like VCY that have been with us since our founding in 1986 and have really greatly valued your partnership as well as all of the viewers.
Matter of fact, I saw Marv Bunyan at the event and I went up to him, I said, Marv, this coming September will mark 40 years since I had my first TV interview, and it was you that I was interviewing on the inFocus program. So indeed, VCY has been covering Wisconsin Family Council, had different names back then, but since the very beginning, but the impact. Daniel, there's not another organization in Wisconsin that's doing what you're doing.
Yeah, and one of the things, too, was really neat for us to be able to roll out at this gala was our new vision. And one of the things we wanted to be clear about is we aren't retreating from who we are. We're actually running more towards that Christian identity and purpose. And so our vision is transforming Wisconsin for biblical influence. And so it's really, and I look at Julian's tenure, I look at Marv's tenure, that was always their heart. They wanted Jesus to be proclaimed. Yeah. They wanted the scriptures to be advanced, and they wanted to see a culture that truly honored God. And so we're continuing to move forward in this bold vision to walk alongside the church, walk alongside believers to make sure the scriptures are a key component for our culture's future.
Yeah, so very important. Let's talk about a national issue first, and that is what happened last Friday from the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, where they put a sudden halt at the request of a state and pro-family groups on this just freelance dispensing of the abortion pill, mifepristone. And then today we saw the United States Supreme Court reverse it. Give us some context what's going on here.
Yeah, and I shared a little bit about this with you and others while it happened live at the gala. And so I'll just talk to the audience briefly for those that are unaware of what happened in the situation. And so what we saw, the broader cases, there was a woman in Louisiana. And again, right now, unfortunately, what's happening with these chemical abortions, they account for 60% of all abortions across the United States. And what happened with this woman specifically was her boyfriend had ordered one of these mail-in abortion pills without her consent, and unfortunately coerced her into taking the abortion pill and destroying her unborn child's life and killing that child. And so what we tried to do through this, and we signed an amicus brief to encourage this court, as well as we have signed into another one today with the Supreme Court, is to say that there should no longer be these mail-in abortions that are violating state law, but putting women and children at risk. This isn't a situation where you see a man is taken advantage of a woman as well as their child. And it's just really unfortunate to see. And we would encourage the U.S. Supreme Court to undo their stay and make sure that women and babies are protected.
And I believe they're just kind of waiting for that course to go through the judicial process for that final decision to be made.
Yep, right now it's going through that judicial process. And so we submitted an amicus brief alongside some partners earlier today that really tried to push back and be able to say that no, Supreme Court, you really need to have this restriction go on through the court hearing process. And the one thing that really should be a concern for everyone, again, if we care about women's health, if we care about making sure women are protected, 1 out of every 9 women who take this abortion pill, they end up in the emergency room with things like sepsis, hemorrhaging, other severe adverse effects. If we really cared about women's health, we would want to say doctors need to be involved in this important decision. And when it's happening through the mail without a doctor being involved in the conversation, where are these women supposed to go when they have these medical issues? And unfortunately, we have seen women die as a result of this.
Yeah, and forced abortions. I mean, the slipping into the food and so forth, as you mentioned, are forced. Yep. And then we see also those who are perpetrators of child sexual abuse that get a free ride.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many reasons why this is a terrible policy to allow for. And again, the issue is with the FDA. So states like Wisconsin, we had a pre-roll ban that did not allow for chemical abortions, but what's happening is California didn't care. And so California companies were mailing this across into our state. We see this whether in other states like Louisiana, states like Texas that do have these different protections for the preborn. But unfortunately, states like California and others are not protecting those state laws in other places. And that's why we believe the FDA needs to step up, and the FDA needs to come in and say, no, you are not allowed to violate state law by using federal mailing.
Okay, well, that issue going on right now, and friends, be praying as this works through the not the legislative, but the judicial process at this point, as this has been challenged, and it will make its way back up to the U.S. Supreme Court again, no doubt. There's another issue that's going on, and that is last Tuesday that there was a House hearing. It was from the subcommittee, the Judiciary Committee, that was going on in regard to investigation of the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, or the FACE Act. And this is something that was going on, and I want you to see an exchange that happened between Congressman Brandon Gill of Texas and also the American University Washington College of Law professor Jessica Waters, as he was just holding her feet to the fire to help the public and also she recognize what abortion truly is. Let's watch that video.
You're an advocate for abortion, for abortion policy. What's your favorite type of abortion?
I am an advocate for patients having access to the full realm of reproductive health care.
But do you have a preferred method of abortion that you like?
I do not.
Let me read through a couple different methods, and I want to get your take on how much you like these. The first type is called a suction abortion. This is when the cervix is dilated and a strong suction, 29 times the power of a household vacuum cleaner, tears the baby's body apart and sucks it through the hose into a container. Do you prefer that method?
I stand by my former testimony.
That sounds kind of gross, doesn't it? Sounds pretty gruesome. Do you agree? It does to me.
I stand by how I answered your question fully and accurately.
Okay, what about this one? This one is called dilation and curettage. After dilation of the cervix, a sharp looped knife is inserted into the uterus. The baby's body is cut into pieces and extracted, often by suction. Do you prefer that method?
What I believe we are here to talk about today is the FACE Act. We are not here to talk about the legality of abortion.
I'm asking you, you're a pro-abortion advocate. I'm asking if you prefer the dilation and curettage method.
I am access to reproductive health care advocate.
You don't want to talk about abortion itself. Why is that?
I would prefer to talk about the reason that the committee called the hearing.
Is it because it's uncomfortable to talk about?
I would prefer
it should be uncomfortable.
I would prefer, if you would let me finish my statement, to talk about the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, which is what I was asked to come here
what that access gets. How about this one? It's called dilation and evacuation. Forceps are inserted into the uterus, grabbing and twisting the baby's body to dismember him or her. If the head is too large, it must be crushed in order to remove it. Do you prefer that method?
I would prefer to talk about the reason the hearing was called and the basis of my expert testimony.
It's uncomfortable to hear this, isn't it? It is. I think it is, because it's barbaric and evil. How about this one? It's called the saline injection. It's when a 20% salt solution is injected through the mother's abdomen into the baby's amniotic fluid. The baby's skin is burned off. The baby ingests the solution and dies of salt poisoning, dehydration, and hemorrhaging of the brain. Do you prefer that method?
I would prefer to talk about the subject of the hearing.
This is the subject of the hearing. This is about protests outside of abortion clinics. I'm asking you about abortion.
I stand by my prior testimony.
Okay. I wouldn't want to talk about this either if I were you, because it is barbaric and evil.
Congressman Gill, here grilling an individual. Daniel, your response to what you saw here?
Well, we heard it very clearly and plainly from that lady that she would prefer not to talk about what abortion actually is. And this is where we find it really interesting with the abortion advocates, where they would never say that they're abortion advocates, but they'd use this terminology of reproductive health care. But when you actually talk about what is an abortion, we see that their arguments fall apart. We see that the humanity of the unborn child is neglected. We see the destruction. And again, I feel like it's so terrible that we have to hear about what actually happens to a baby in an abortion. But my hope and prayer would be that as people see that and hear that, they understand the fight that we are fighting against, whether it be in Washington or whether it be in Madison, when we are advocating for the sanctity of human life. And this is where I think it's so important for our public school systems, as well as our Christian schools, homeschooling, everything, that we need to make sure that children are aware of what actually is involved when human life is taken through the abortion process.
Yeah, and friends, just know this, abortion is not health care. Okay, when we're taking the life of another, that is not health care. And that is, we are told that over and over and over again, and certainly we just came through our Wisconsin Supreme Court race on that issue. We hear that from different politicians. You'll hear that from Planned Parenthood, but it is, let's follow the science. That's what we hear all the time, Daniel.
Yeah, well, the science is very clear. Again, what we just heard described, that is not healthcare.
Right.
That is intentionally destroying a human life, killing a human life. And unfortunately, too, we don't consider the long-term psychological effects that it does to the mothers. We don't account for what the psychological effects are for the fathers. All these different issues that come into play. And again, abortion harms women, it harms children, family, as well as men.
Right. Daniel Degner with us here tonight on inFocus, public policy updates. And just over a week ago, there was another assassination attempt on that of President Donald Trump. And we'd like to just share with you a video clip from Caroline Leavitt as she was at the White House. She was she is a press secretary and spoke to this issue. One just brief excerpt from what she had to say.
President Trump is fearless because he loves this country, and he is willing to put his own life on the line to deliver on the promises that he made to the American public who elected him here into the highest office in the land. And while we are blessed to have a fearless president, we should not live in a country where such constant fear of political violence permeates our society every single day. We can and we should have fierce disagreement in this country. As you all know, we disagree often, myself in this role and all of you in the news media, but those disagreements must remain peaceful. Debating, peaceful protesting, and voting are how we need to settle disagreements, not bullets. Nobody in recent years has faced more bullets and more violence than President Trump. This political violence stems from a systemic demonization of him and his supporters by commentators, yes, by elected members of the Democrat Party, and even some in the media. This hateful and constant and violent rhetoric directed at President Trump day after day after day for 11 years has helped to legitimize this violence and bring us to this dark moment.
Okay, that coming from the White House. And I played that clip for a reason here, Daniel, because we are seeing situations where people across the United States are saying, oh, I should have gotten him, et cetera, et cetera. Here is a story that came from WND.com, WorldNet Daily, of a social studies teacher in Kaukauna, Wisconsin, who the report's name is Patrick Meyer, allegedly took to social media whining that the shooter failed in his attempt to kill the president, and then included MAGAA, Make America Great Assassins Again. and his comments widely condemned. But this is a teacher in, again, our public education system. I'm wondering what's going on in the classroom.
Yeah, well, and not just only is he a teacher in the public education system, from what I understand is he's a teacher that teaches about government, that teaches about U.S. history, talk about just how unfortunate it is of what he's sharing in the classroom, but also what this could mean for what is actually happening for those kids in the learning environment. What indoctrination are they seeing and hearing? And especially, this is another opportunity to say, this is why Christian education, homeschool education is such a great option for families, because I know if it was my own children, I would not want them to even have the opportunity to have that sort of indoctrination in the classroom.
Right, and we understand here as well that last week the school board called a special meeting to deal with this issue, and here's the headline: special meeting ends with no decision about firing Kaukauna teacher for assassination post. So we understand that Kaukauna is still having to deal with this issue, but sadly it's not only Kaukauna, Wisconsin. There are other school districts around the state also dealing with this issue.
Yeah, and after the Charlie Kirk shooting, we have a couple exchange students of our own in our own home, and unfortunately one of their teachers posted something similar to this on Facebook. And so this is personal to us. We've had to walk through it with our own students. And thankfully, our school district and that teacher, they parted ways and they separated. And I assume this is what will happen in this situation too. But it really harms the students, most importantly, because not only is their education negatively impacted by what is said, but also they have the ramifications of not having a teacher the rest of the year. And there's so many negatives that happen from this. But again, this is the concern we see with the political rhetoric on the left. I'm forgetting the exact study and the exact numbers, but there's an alarming amount of people on the left who would cheer on political violence for their political opponents. And so this is something that as a society, as a culture, we need to work on humanizing people in politics instead of demonizing those we disagree with, but especially always clearly saying that political violence of any kind is always wrong.
Yeah, indeed it is. And sadly, friends, this is, running the gamut in so many different realms. And as I mentioned, there's been all kinds of posting on social media. Some people, criticizing the gunman in various attempts for not taking his life, and how can they miss all this, just the garbage that's being spewed forth from this. Well, this also brings us to our Wisconsin elections now too, because here is a story about the Minocqua Brewing Company owner and liberal activist Kirk Bangstad said he's running for governor. And this is a group that is offering to pour free beer on the day that Donald Trump dies. He has announced his bid now for governor of the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah, and again, we're seeing this all over the left. There was a controversy over the weekend that on the 8th Congressional District for the Democratic Party, their convention, that there was a candidate who was disinvited because that candidate who is transgender had also mentioned some things regarding the assassination, unfortunately. But it's really unfortunate to see what we have here in Wisconsin. We have Kirk Bangstad, we have Minocqua Brewing Company is coming out and saying, we are going to offer free beer if someone's able to successfully shoot and kill the president. The world that we live in today, for that to happen is absolutely just, it's really sad about where our society's at. And especially to see now he's being praised for running for governor. And I'm sure we are going to see a alarming amount of people that will come out and condemn his race, condemn what he's doing. But it really is a concern. And one of the concerns I'd have too with him is he did come out and support Senator Kelda Roys, who's also running for governor, and saying Kelda Roys stands with us on these issues. And again, I could be wrong. I may not have seen it, but I have yet to see Kelda Roys condemn support from Kirk Bangstad, and I would hope that she would, especially because of her background as serving as an abortion lobbyist, being an advocate for the abortion lobby, as well as her support from the teachers union. I would really hope that the Wisconsin Teachers Union would not put up with this sort of behavior. But again, we just talked about that teacher from Kaukauna as well.
Right, and friends, keep in mind, we are just 6 months away from the November election. 6 months away, and we are going to be electing a governor, a lieutenant governor, attorney general, secretary of state, one half of our Wisconsin State Senate, our entire Wisconsin State Assembly, every congressional district in Wisconsin, and other things. Referenda questions are going to be on the ballot. Constitutional amendments, one of which Wisconsin Family Council has been engaged from the start as well.
Yeah, and speaking of the November election being less than 6 months away, earlier this morning I was looking at the calendar. We are less than 100 days away from the August primary election as well. And so that's another election we encourage people to be a part of, but we'll be a part of a constitutional amendment. This will be the second one in our organization's history. The first one was the marriage amendment 20 years ago to define marriage between a man and a woman. But this amendment will ensure that churches can never get shut down by the government again. And I was amazed today on our social media, we're promoting this constitutional amendment, and someone commented, said, well, no one has ever come out and said that people aren't allowed to attend church.
Oh my.
And we had to go back and look at, you don't remember in 2020 when we had police showing up to churches doing drive-in services. I had pastors in Madison reaching out to me all the way through August, all the way into 2021 saying, police are showing up to my church because they had stricter local ordinance violations than what we had at the state level. And this is an opportunity to make it very clear. The church is what decides whether or not they're open or closed, and not the government. You know,
it was so amazing to see what was going on. Some had proclamations or directives, emergency orders that congregants could not sing in their churches. There were even those who mandated social distancing of vehicles out in the parking lot.
Yeah, well, in Oshkosh was a clear example. Oshkosh, we saw police literally come and say, nope, you cannot have an outdoor drive-in theater. And thankfully for what my predecessor, Jelaine Appling, alongside the help of Wisconsin Institute on Law and Liberty, they had threatened to sue the Evers administration. That caused the Evers administration to clarify, by the way, you can meet in your own cars and meet in a parking lot. But again, for us to have to go to the government and say, are we allowed to meet in our own parking lot with cars without anyone talking to each other or being in the same area? That is un-American. That is ridiculous. And we have an opportunity this November to ensure that will never happen again. And it will be us and our churches will be the ones making those decisions.
Yeah, keep in mind, friends, the businesses that were declared essential, like abortion clinics, strip clubs, and every store, just about every store. Michigan, they put blockers over certain aisles you could not shop in because the products were not considered, to be of an essential nature. But it has just been way off the charts the way government reacted. And this would allow, in the state of Wisconsin, to not allow such a directive ever to close churches again.
Yep, and we think this is a great opportunity for Christians to come out and vote to support their own church. And yes, this would make it very clear that government can never come in at a local or a state level to shut down a church with a public health emergency. And again, would encourage you to vote in that November election and to really research what is the opportunities available. And again, the opportunities, what a yes vote means is a yes vote means that the state can never shut your church down again, where a no vote allows for the status quo, where we could see something like in 2020, where a government with a governor through an edict, as well as the Supreme Court, could allow for churches to be shut down.
So friends, that coming up again on the ballot in November, many other issues too. We mentioned that of governor, and here's another candidate that here the news stories are talking about this a Democratic socialist, Francesca Hong, that is, according to news reports, that she's gaining some momentum and quite a bit of electricity in her campaign.
Yeah, and the one thing I'd say too, Jim, is sometimes we say these things like socialist and people are like, oh no, you're just like exaggerating, you're trying to make a political point. No, Francesca Hahn actually calls herself a Democratic socialist. There's a socialist caucus in the state assembly, and she is one of the leaders of that. And again, what are the ramifications that we could see very negatively with her leadership? So Francesca Hahn, when she's been in the state legislature, what are some of the bills she's voted against this session? There was a bill, and again, we talked about this in previous times I've been here, that there was a bill that would say it is a crime for a teacher to groom a student. And we've seen this, unfortunately, in other areas throughout the state. The one right now where it's already being laid out is in the Madison Public School District. There's a teacher who leads the LGBT club at school who is grooming a student. But one of the things that Francesca Hahn did on this, and she voted against it because she said, well, this will negatively impact LGBT teachers. And for example, the one in Madison who's currently facing charges for this. Right. She voted against protecting children from pornography. She has votes that are very, very poor. And again, what is one of the things she's running on again? She wants to legalize prostitution. What did she do on Good Friday of last year? On Good Friday of last year, while you and I were in church celebrating and mourning the loss of Jesus, what she was doing is she was honoring and celebrating a porn star for being the penthouse pet of the year.
My. So lots, friends, to be watching in the news and the cycle, and staying plugged in with Wisconsin Family Council here, as we do have this primary coming up in August, the final election then in November. And speaking of this election, Daniel, there are, it seems like every week we're hearing from another not running for office again, candidates not signing the papers, running for non-election now at this point, but several in the Republican Party, and a lot of this is due to the redistricting going on?
Yeah, there's a handful of factors, and some people are trying to look in for political motives. I wouldn't necessarily say political motives. For example, in the Senate, we have some big names. So basically how the Senate's wrapping up and looking like is for Democrats, in order to win the state Senate, they need to win 3 of 4 tightly contested races. For Republicans, they need to win 2 of them. What are those races? There's the Eau Claire seat, where there was a candidate who was a Republican that was redistricted into that seat. He is not running, so you'll have an incumbent liberal versus a person who ran for state assembly last time. Former news anchor, her name is actually Maga Dance, a very interesting name in our current political environment. The other seat is in southwest Wisconsin. That's Howard Markline, the incumbent Republican, running against Jenna Jacobson, a state representative from Oregon, the Madison area. Then you have in the other parts of the state, you have in the Milwaukee area, you have Rob Hutton has retired. So that seat will include Wauwatosa, all the way over to Pewaukee. And then you'll have in the lower area, the Racine area, that will be an open seat as well. And Senator Van Wangard stepped down due to some medical issues within his family. So those seats you'll see are really going to be key, and those are some of those retirements. But then there's also just every cycle, there's retirements. People retire because of age. Some people retire too. I have a friend that he was there for 2 terms. He believed in the idea, just like President Trump, that you should have business leaders that are serving these offices, and you should have term limits. And so for him, he said, I've done 2 terms, I'm retired, I'm going to go back to retirement, and it should be for someone who's coming out of business as well.
One announcement just coming out last week, and that is the pro-life legislative champion, Andre Jacques, announced he is not going to be seeking re-election.
Yeah, and it is such a bummer to see Senator Jacques retiring. And again, Senator Jacques has been just such a strong advocate for the life issue. And I just signed a letter to his office just to thank him for his leadership today. And Senator Jacques, I say this very clearly, very plainly, he is the best pro-life champion we've had in the legislature this last decade. And he has been a great advocate for the unborn. He's been a great advocate for his constituents and for people. But unfortunately, he was one of these 2 that he was forced to move it for a multiple time with the redistricting, and came out and said he wasn't running. And right now, we really do need to pray that God would send a candidate for that seat in the 1st Senate District. That's the area of the state over by Green Bay, all the way to the east side of Appleton, all the way to Lake Michigan. But we need to pray that we get a good Christian candidate to run for that seat.
Also shaping up is the Supreme Court for next spring. We'll get to that in just a moment, but since you were on with us last, we have a new Supreme Court justice that will be taking the bench, was it like August 1st? And so this is Judge Chris Taylor. There's a note from the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. Judge Chris Taylor wins Wisconsin Supreme Court race, ensuring liberal majority through 2030. And then also here's a release that came out from the Freedom from Religion Foundation Action Fund. FFRF Action Fund goes 5 for 5 in Wisconsin spring elections, as this atheist group is just thrilled that Chris Taylor took that position.
Yeah, again, I would say it's very telling when we see you have the abortion lobby is very excited about a win. You see anti any sort of like family unit groups, anti-religious groups feel like they had a big win in this. But again, I think there's a couple major things we need to look at as we look to 2027 and beyond, is we need to have conservative candidates for Supreme Court be willing to say where they stand on the issues. And I think that's one of the major issues we ran into this election cycle. If you look at Marquette polling, 85% of people say they want to know where their candidates stand on the issues. And unfortunately, what conservatives have run into is they said they don't want to talk about issues, but they want to talk about jurisprudence, which I personally believe is the better path. But unfortunately, because of how our election system is set up, it will be impossible for conservatives to outdo the voting thresholds that liberals are able to bring out through talking about issues that motivate their base.
Yeah. The integrity of the position has been thrown out the window, sadly. And this is where we had people like Justice Kelly before take a strong principled stand on those issues. Here's from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. As we talk about April of 2027, conservative Justice Annette Ziegler won't run for a new term in 2027. She has been a conservative on the court, and instead we have now Judge Colon joins the race for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And then also we have another individual, Judge Lindsay Brunette, began her campaign for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Many people jumping in already for April of 2027.
Yeah, and we'll see. There still isn't a conservative running. What's unique with those liberal candidates is it breaks the mold a little bit either way. So what is the mold we've seen with liberal candidates? They pick women, and they pick them from Dane County, which is Madison, or from Milwaukee County. And so we'll see. It'll be interesting if they end up choosing a man to be their nominee who's in Milwaukee County, or if they choose an outstate, that female that's running. She is from Wood County, which is the Wisconsin Rapids area.
Okay, Daniel Degner with us tonight. And friends, it's another week, another month, and here we have another proclamation from Governor Evers. We have seen so many promoting the LGBT movement. And here he goes again, now with a proclamation for Lesbian Visibility Week. And this was for the week of April 20 through 26, 2026. Daniel, do we really need a proclamation? I mean, promoting Lesbian Visibility Week?
I was going to say, Jim, I feel like every time I'm here, there's something new that's coming out of the governor's office. And again, this is what it comes down to, is instead of focusing on the real issues that matter to people. So, for example, what if some of the things the governor that he vetoed towards the end of the legislative session? He vetoed protecting children from pornography. He vetoed no tax on tips. He vetoed all these different things that are really important for families. But what is his focus? It's on these special interest political groups and making them feel like they are heard or wanted. But again, this is representing a minority of the population and a minority of the voting base. But it shows that he never truly was this moderate that he appeared to be, but he was always a very far left Democrat advancing an over-sexualized agenda.
So here we have the Lesbian Visibility Week. Again, it's one of many proclamations that have come from the Evers administration, even in this last 12 months, promoting aberrant lifestyles, as this one does as well. Title IX. Where do things stand? I know that the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty has filed legal action against Title IX issues here in the state, and how Wisconsin is dealing with Title IX. What's going on?
Yeah, so broader context, again, Title IX, what Title IX deals with is ensuring fairness in government entities, specifically schools for women. And so what we have seen is a lot of different rulings throughout the years on the Title IX issue. And one of the issues we ran into with New Richmond, and context for those in New Richmond, is New Richmond said that they were going to allow for a biological male to go into a female's locker room, female bathrooms, and that caused a national controversy. But unfortunately, what we've seen is because of the current case law, that is unfortunately what case law does dictate. And so what we're hopeful here is with other lawsuits we've signed in amicus briefs, as well as potentially this one, that we could see the status quo change to really truly define what Title IX was meant to do. Title IX was meant to protect women, save women's sports, ensure that women had equal access. And unfortunately, what we see with the LGBT ideology is they're using it to advance transgender ideology that ultimately hurts women. And so hopefully this case will be able to protect women and then their safe spaces, including those bathrooms and locker rooms.
Okay, so we still have issues in Wisconsin.
Oh yes, we still have issues in Wisconsin, as well as even nationally, but specifically in Wisconsin, what I would really encourage people to is from time to time, I'll be at different events talking to our partners around the state, and they'll say, isn't it great that we have President Trump because we have these legislative wins, we have these executive order wins, which again, I think they're great wins. But the problem is the second President Trump leaves office, let's say if we were to get a Kamala Harris to be president or a Joe Biden or someone like that, we go right back to all those bad policies we had before. And in a state like Wisconsin, unfortunately, we don't have those long-term rights secured because we gave opportunities, but Governor Evers, he vetoed those at every single opportunity that we had. And so we really need to make sure that Christians vote this November with that issue in mind so that there's an opportunity to protect and safeguard Title IX for the future of Wisconsin children.
And friends, we'll be talking more about this as we get closer to the elections, but you have a stewardship. You've got a stewardship of your vote that you're accountable before God and certainly accountable to your children and grandchildren, future generations in this state as well. And so critically important that you are informed on the issues, informed on the candidates, and that you cast a prayerful vote as you consider your ballot. We also had seen a decision come forth from the United States Supreme Court dealing with the issue of talk therapy. In today's media, they'll call it conversion therapy, but this is really communicating to young people, teens, adults about unwanted same-sex attraction, things of that nature. Where does that stand in our state as well? It seems like the Supreme Court made a decision, but I don't know that we're complying in Wisconsin.
Yeah, and this is, again, where you look at what is really the intent. And so it was interesting, City of Appleton, they had done a similar thing. There was 14 municipalities that we're aware of that had these sort of conversion therapy bans, or really it was a viewpoint discrimination. Again, this is what the Evers administration and others are doing, is they're discriminating against Christians as well as those who affirm biological realities. And what we saw was there was a pushback. Are you going to rescind in Appleton this unconstitutional order? And the response was, well, we don't really see a need because we've never actually enforced it, which begs the question of, well, why would they do it in the first place? Well, the reason they would do it is to scare Christians and to scare those who actually needed or sought the help. And so unfortunately, where we are in Wisconsin is Governor Evers' administration created the same sort of viewpoint discrimination ban in Wisconsin where therapists, licensed counselors and therapists are not allowed to be able to affirm biological gender and realities in the counseling room. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled 8-1, very clear ruling that they cannot do this. It's unconstitutional. We, alongside our partners at Wisconsin Institute of Law and Liberty, have called for a demand letter for him to retract that. We have yet to hear back. And so unless we hear back in the coming weeks, we do plan to use every legal action necessary to ensure that counselors and therapists, as well as their clients, are protected and we are not discriminated against by the Evers administration.
Right, and we're seeing that even on local level, of course, like Milwaukee County and other locations have done that as well. And it's time to comply with that Supreme Court order.
Yep, and if they don't comply, our partners at Wisconsin Institute of Law and Liberty, as well as us, we will do everything in our power to make sure that we win in the courts. And normally, how courts have handled situations like this is it is not friendly to the government, especially when it's already been ruled as unconstitutional.
Daniel Degner with us here tonight on inFocus. We're talking about a number of public policy related issues. We've got more, but I would like to open our phone lines. We've got many different topics and issues, and we'd like to encourage you. We've already discussed several things here this evening. If you have a question about things we've talked about so far, or a comment on the things we've discussed, you're invited to give us a call tonight here on TV30's inFocus program. That's one thing that's unique about this program. You have an opportunity to get engaged yourself, to call in, ask a question, make a comment, or you can also text it in. So let me give you some numbers. To call, give us just call us here at 414-935-3030. That's 414-935-3030. You can also reach us at 1-800-733-8830. That's 1-800-733-8830. If you'd like to text in your question this evening, be sure to give us your first name, the city you're texting from, and put it as in a brief fashion as you can. Send your text to your question or brief comment to 414-459-9638. That's 414-459-9638, and text in your question or comment. Friends, we've got to be engaged. It's one of these things where we cannot be spectators. We need to be participators and involved in the action, not watching from the end zone, but really getting engaged into the matters that are taking place. And here's your opportunity to speak out on some of these very, very critical, important issues. And you're welcome to call us on inFocus, to send in your text. We'll keep the numbers going on the screen as well for your opportunity to get engaged with this as well. Let's deal with another issue, and that is a ranking that Wisconsin received, 21st in family stability. What is this all about?
Yeah, so our friends over in Ohio with Institute of Family Studies, as well as the Center for Christian Virtue, which is our counterpart in Ohio, they came out with this family studies. This is the second year that we've been able to do this, and so there's good news with this, but also bad news. So the good news is we jumped from 24 to 21, so you would think, okay, that's great, we're moving in the right direction. What does it look at? It looks at things like what is the percentage of prime-aged married adults. It looks at things like what is the percentage of children that are in their married or that are in their biological or adoptive household with married mom and dad. And then it also does look at a handful of other issues. And unfortunately, what we saw is, yes, we moved up from 24 to 21. However, we moved down in all those criteria areas that was looked at. So again, we're doing better in the context of the whole nation, but overall we see these statistics are continuing to decline. And for us, we look at that as a pro-marriage, a pro-family organization. We need in Wisconsin to really advocate for families, and we need legislators and a governor who will do what they can to keep Wisconsin's greatest resource, the natural family, intact, as well as promote issues like marriage.
How critically important that is. Daniel, we keep hearing about we need to do things in the best interest of children, and we'll hear from the teachers union. We'll hear about the children. We want to see children succeed, and they'll speak against shrinking the amount of administration running classrooms and things like that. But this last Friday was May Day, and we saw school districts. Here's one release that came out from the Gateway Pundit. Wisconsin School District cancels all classes on May 1st so teachers can join anti-ICE Day without immigrants protest. And here we have teachers that are abandoning the classroom, and I believe it's both Madison schools and Sun Prairie schools that canceled classes so that teachers could get out there and protest. Whatever happened to the best interest of the child, the students in their classroom? Well,
I'll say one thing this definitely reminds me of is what we went through in Wisconsin during Act 10. We saw very similar tactics used by the teachers union, by the left. And what was really unfortunate, the Sun Prairie situation is, if I recall correctly, they only gave less than a 24 hours notice. Then Thursday is when they said, oh, by the way, parents, you better figure out childcare tomorrow because we're just not going to show up to work. So unfortunate. Again, this is where we see issues with the public education system, where they put the desires of themselves over the desires of the students, as well as the best interests of the students that they're teaching. And again, there's no place for this in a professional workplace. There's no place for this when we talk about education, is when we're putting those desires of those adults, the political desires, the protests they want to be a part of, over the education of their students. And again, I look at where are we as a state when it comes to education numbers? We continue to see declines when it comes to reading and math and all these important things. But why are we not focusing on those, but instead we're focusing on protests? Really, we need to get back to the basics of reading, writing, arithmetic. But again, one of the things we'll always hear too is, well, they just need more money. They just need more money in the public schools. And again, if what they're going to do with more money in the public schools is continue to have more and more protests and less time in the classroom because they are more interested in political activities, that's another reason why we should not give more money to these public schools.
Friends, I'd like to know what you think about that, having to shut down schools so teachers can go out there and protest. I mean, it's amazing. Numbers are on the screen. Tom Tiffany spoke out on this as well, who is a candidate, Republican candidate for governor. And the MacIver Institute carried this story, how he blasted schools. He said Sun Prairie area schools in Madison Metropolitan School District canceled schools so teachers can protest deportations. Sun Prairie gave parents less than 24 hours notice. In both districts, fewer than 50% of students are proficient in reading, Tiffany wrote. And statewide, we understand test scores show that 2/3 of kinds in Wisconsin schools cannot read or write at grade level. The scores are even worse for Black and low-income kids. In Madison, 90% of Black fourth graders cannot read well or solve simple math problems. In Milwaukee Public Schools, 95% of Black fourth graders are behind. We have this statement here as well. Our Madison Teachers Incorporated partners recently shared that they received 70% of staff signatures supporting participation in a day without immigrants as part of the May Day Strong National Day of Action. The district said in an announcement, after a conversation with MTI, we understand that we may experience low staff turnout from believe this will directly affect the safety of our community due to insufficient supervision and educational support for our students. Unbelievable what's taken place.
Yeah. Something that was in there, if you could go back to that, is just, I think so clearly, they were concerned about the safety of their community due to teachers being unwilling to go to the classroom.
Yeah.
This is the world we're living in. This is what we are seeing with our public schools. And again, we need to see the desire of these teachers be lessened, but also what is in the best interest of these kids. Again, we saw the numbers in there too about just the low reading scores, as well as the negative impacts for those that are lower income or even other races within these public schools. We need to do everything we can to promote the education of these students, and by promoting the education of these students, it means at the same time we are not taking off of work, we're not canceling school to do political protests.
Okay, Daniel Degner with us tonight. Our line is open, 414-935-3030. That's 414-935-3030, 800-733-8830. And friends, it doesn't take a whole lot of strength to send a text in as well this evening. You can send a text, your first name, city you're texting from, 414-459-9638. These are critical public policy issues here in our state. Daniel, we know also that there was movement on this whole matter of sports betting here in the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah, and there's some good news and bad news with that. So unfortunately, Governor Evers did sign legislation that would allow for online sports betting. And it's really interesting when you look at it. So you may have heard of different groups out there. For example, there's lots of ads with a group called Kalshi. But what they do is they don't call them necessarily betting, but they do prediction markets and odds. And so they could even do, for example, they could have a bet on what is the next question that Jim Schneider asks on VCY. It's that intense of different things that happen. And that is illegal, at least I would argue, in Wisconsin. But unfortunately, we saw that Josh Kalsner's administration with DOJ was not enforcing that law. So now that online sports betting is legalized, what is the first thing that we see Josh Kal's administration do? Is now they're going after these prediction markets, which I am glad they're going after the prediction markets, don't get me wrong, but why did it take for them to wait until the tribes can profit off of this? And the one thing I will say too is we are in the process of looking for petitioners for a lawsuit because we believe this violates the state constitution. Our state constitution is very clear that gambling can only occur on tribal lands. And so their way around is they're saying, well, if we have the computer that's running all these online sports bets at the tribal land, therefore it's legal throughout the state. I believe that is a violation of the state constitution. It's a violation of the voters and the will of them. And we really need to make sure that we take this to the courts to really uphold our constitution and get rid of online sports betting.
So would a decision like that come from making its way up to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, or would it go into federal courts?
Yeah, so it's a Wisconsin state constitution issue. So that will be a state court instead of a federal court issue.
Okay, so our liberal justices would be the one deciding that.
Yeah, potentially, yes.
Potentially. Here's a text from Alicia from Sheboygan. She asked, if Trump signed to only fly our American flag, why does Governor Evers still fly the LGBT flag on the Capitol of Madison? Can something be done about it?
Yeah, well, and that's a great question based off of what you just asked, what we just shared, Jim, is so we have federal government, we have state government, we have local government. And so each of these can operate independently. And so at the state level, Governor Evers is the top elected official, so he can make decisions for state governments just as local governments can make decisions like that for local governments. So unfortunately, right now, there's nothing that we can do. In the month of June, when we come back in June, we will likely see the governor will once again put up the trans flag. He'll once again put up the LGBT flags. But with that, this is where I think it's important for Christians to say, what sort of administration do I want to have lead the state? And the difference between what we can do practically is to ensure that this doesn't happen in 2027, doesn't happen in 2028, 2029, et cetera, is we need to elect a candidate for governor who is not going to advance this LGBT ideology. And right now, I would argue that it's pretty clear there's one candidate running for governor who would not do this, and then there's about 10 other candidates running for governor who would advance this. Okay, again, so just to break that down here, the president would have jurisdiction over federal buildings, so a federal building in Wisconsin would have to abide by the president, as would our national parks. However, the state parks, state buildings, that's under the jurisdiction of the governor. Yeah, and correct. So therefore he doesn't have to comply. Yep. With that federal order. So thank you very much for that. We had a text here from Denise in Franklin. She says, thank you for your incredible work, and very grateful for
the information coming through inFocus.
Yeah, well, thank you, Denise. And again, all the work that we do is possible because of our partners, as well as partners like VCY America. And so we're grateful for your partnership and the viewers' partnership, but as well as VCY's.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of Wisconsin Family Council, you've got a point of contact where our viewers can stay plugged in and on the many different issues.
Yeah, you can go to wifamilycouncil.org to find more information about us, or call our office at 888-378-7395.
Give that number again, just a little slower this time.
Oh yeah, 888-378-7395.
And again, that's wifamilycouncil.org as well, to be in connection with Wisconsin Family Council. And write down the information there at wifamilycouncil.org. Again, 1-888-378-7395. Lines are open here for inFocus, 414-935-3030. And text in your comments or questions, 414-459-9638. Daniel, you were just recently in Washington, D.C. for an event at the Museum of the Bible.
Yeah, that was just so much fun. So America Reads the Bible. So one of the heart pieces, and we were the Wisconsin host for this event. Our national partners, Family Policy Alliance, was the national host. And our heartbeat was for America 250. We wanted to go back to our foundings as a nation, our foundings as a country. And we believe that the Bible is the main part of what helped found the country. If you look at the founding documents, the document that is cited the most is the scriptures. And so we read from Genesis 1 all the way through Revelation 22 to encourage America to go back to the Bible and go back to our foundation. And we believe that through the scriptures, we can see revival in our land, we can see transformation in our country. And again, what was really neat is just seeing how this took off. We had millions of people around the nation that were watching this. I talked to schools in Wisconsin, Christian schools, of course, not public schools, that were playing this during the week. And it was just really amazing to see some of the different people that came out. And we were able to interact with Speaker Mike Johnson, who boldly said this is an essential part for America. We saw President Donald Trump take part of it. Even during our Wisconsin portion of the reading, the Agriculture Secretary of America came out and read Exodus 3. And so again, it was just a really neat opportunity to connect with tons of people across America and to get us back to the scriptures, back to that founding point. And again, we were really blessed to have really important speakers from Wisconsin that include but aren't limited to Dr. David Anderson from Maranatha, Jelaine Appling, our President Emeritus. We had Ken Nabby from Converge Great Lakes, Bob Lenz from Life Promotions, myself. We also saw Congressman Tom Tiffany joined, as well as Secretary Sean Duffy, as well as Governor Scott Walker.
Bill Federer, who's been on this program too, is one of the readers.
Oh, great. I didn't know that he was there.
So close to 500 readers of the scriptures.
Yeah, I didn't realize that he was there, but I'm glad he was. But yeah, we had 475 readers that were a part of it. And again, we were honored to be the host, but I'm really glad I wasn't the detail person of it, because that would have been a lot of work to get everyone ready.
A lot of coordination. Let's go to Chris, who is calling from New Berlin. Hi, Chris, you're on the air.
Thank you very much. This is directed to Mr. Degner. I had asked this question previously of Jelaine Appling if she'd be interested in running for governor. Would you?
Well, Chris, that's a great question. I personally do not see myself running for any elected office. I used to serve in city council. I served on village board. But at this stage of my life, I don't see myself running for any other office. Again, I love what we get to do, especially at Wisconsin Family Council, Wisconsin Family Action. I don't have to deal with issues that I don't care about. Again, I love serving in local government, but determining our bridge costs, determining our road costs, I didn't really care about as much. But what I really do care about is those core issues of marriage, family, life, religious freedom, school choice. And so it truly is an honor and a blessing to be able to fight for these values and have an influence outside of the Capitol, but to truly influence the Capitol as well as the entire state of Wisconsin. But thanks for asking, Chris.
Great. Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the call here tonight. Our number 414-935-3030, or again, you can text 414-459-9638, and certainly can have even a greater impact upon churches and believers across the state, getting them engaged and understanding. I mean, your theme verse from Hosea, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, and this is something that your organization does. It helps give people that information information, that knowledge, so that they can make informed choices.
Yeah, absolutely. And organizationally for us too, in April 2025, we ran a very extensive Supreme Court sort of mobilization effort. And we were able to help get out alongside partners like yourself and many other partners, 129,281 Christians to vote. What an important aspect is, even though the candidate I would have supported did not win that election, we saw over 129,000 people walk forward in their faith. And we have a vision in 2026 that if we can have partners come alongside us to support this vision, we would love to be able to work alongside them in turning out 438,000 Christians from around Wisconsin to honor God with their vote.
Okay, so again, stay in tune with Wisconsin Family Council. They've got great information, and they're the advocate for you. And before we close the program in a few minutes, we will be giving you their website and their phone number again. And if you have questions that are coming up on public policy issues and election-related issues, give them a call. They're there to serve you in that regard. A few weeks ago on inFocus, we had aired excerpts from the February events that took place at the Capitol for a time of prayer and repentance, seeking God's forgiveness. And you heard on this program different congressmen, you heard governors, a Supreme Court justice, the Speaker of the House coming together and pray, and how important that is. Daniel, there's also an event coming up in Washington, D.C., and I've got a paper on this called Rededicate 250, a national jubilee of prayer, praise, and thanksgiving, an event that's been called for by President Trump.
Yeah, and again, our movement and our organization are proud to join President Trump in advancing and promoting this event. And what we looked at May 17th, 1776. There's a call for the nation to have a day of prayer and humiliation, prayer and fasting, to ask God for wisdom. And that is what led to July 4th, 1776, the Declaration of Independence. And so I'm so thankful that we have an administration that wants to honor and reflect this, and to call our entire nation to this day of prayer, praise, and jubilee on May 17th, 2026, to that 250th anniversary. And so I would encourage you to join me, to join our movement, and really taking time to reflect and join in prayer. And this event will be happening in the National Mall in Washington, D.C. If you're going to Washington, I would highly encourage you to go. But even if not, spend time in your home, your own churches, to honor and reflect this event. But ultimately, to bring praise to where it belongs, Jesus Christ.
Amen, amen. And we so remember there was an admonition given to Israel. There's great application for us. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, will forgive their sin and heal their land. We need that kind of healing in our land.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, with America Reads the Bible, that's where I just thought it was so essential for President Trump to read that passage that you just cited, because that is such a key component that we need to see in our culture. And again, when the America Reads the Bible is finishing was when this third assassination attempt happened. And they went to the theme song of that, where it went back to the Chronicles passage where we said, God, heal our land. If we want God to heal we need God to heal our land more than anything else, especially in light of these assassination attacks we've seen.
We're down to just 90 seconds. Another text just coming in from an individual. I previously called Governor Evers' office to object to the gay pride flag. Is it worth doing this again?
Absolutely. We do not necessarily we are not responsible for outcomes, but we are responsible to stand boldly for biblical values. And so I would always encourage you, reach out to your elected officials, reach out to your senator, representative, as well as governor, to stand boldly for biblical values. And
if you're looking for the governor's number, 608-256-1212, I believe it. So, friends, you can call and get through to the governor in that regard. Just put on the web search Governor Evers and the information will come up. Well, Daniel, thank you for being here today and all this year, this season. This is our final legislative update until the fall schedule, and hope to have you back then.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and hope to see you all later.
Great. And friends, again, to get engaged with Wisconsin Family Council, check out their website, wifamilycouncil.org, wifamilycouncil.org, 1-888-378-7395. And friends, get behind them with your support, get behind them with your prayers, and stay informed. Ask to be part of their email list so you can keep informed on the vital issues that certainly impact our faith, our families, our freedoms here in the state of Wisconsin. Well, good night, friends. Thank you for joining us here on TV 30's inFocus. Have a good evening.